Assalamu alaikum. The Smart Schools Online with Smart Computing for Class 4, Video Lesson number 1, Chapter 1, Working of a Computer. In this lesson, we shall cover working of a computer, that is IPO cycle. Students, you can read from page number 5 to 7 from your textbook. The resources required for this lesson are Online with Smart Computing Book 4, pens, pencils, rubber, sharpener, loose sheets, and notebooks. Students, I hope that you have already arranged these things with you. By the end of this lesson, we shall be able to define a computer, identify working of a computer, describe input, process, and output cycle of the computer. Before we further proceed, let's watch this video together.
Do you remember when you first realized that your computer was more than just a monitor and keyboard? That between the mouse click and the video playing, there was something that captured your attention, understood it, and made it real? What is that something? Is it gremlins? Let's imagine that we can shrink down to the size of an electron and inject ourselves into a click of a mouse. If you took your mouse apart, you'd see that it's really a very simple machine. It has a couple buttons and a system for detecting motion and distance. You might have an optical mouse that makes these measurements with lights and sensors, but older ones did this with a hard rubber ball and some plastic wheels. Same concept. When you click the button on your mouse, it sends a message to the computer with information about its position. When your mouse click is received, it's handled by the basic input-output subsystem. This subsystem acts like the eyes and ears, and mouth and hands of the computer. Basically, it provides a way for the computer to interact with its environment. But it also acts like a buffer to keep the CPU from being overwhelmed by distractions. In this case, the I/O subsystem decides that your mouse click is pretty important, so it generates an interrupt to the CPU. Hey CPU, got a click here. The CPU, or central processing unit, is the brains of the whole computer. Just like your brain doesn't take up your whole body, the CPU doesn't take up the whole computer, but it runs the show all the same. And the CPU's job, its whole job, is fetching instructions from memory and executing them. So while you're typing, maybe really fast, like 60 words a minute, the CPU is fetching and executing billions of instructions a second. Yes, billions, every second. Instructions to move your mouse around on the screen, to run that clock widget on your desktop, play your internet radio, manage the files you're editing on the hard drive, and much, much more. Your computer's CPU is one heck of a multitasker. But oh my gosh, there's a very important mouse click coming through now. Let's drop everything now and deal with that. There are programs for everything that the CPU does. A special program for the mouse, for the clock widget, for the internet radio, and for dealing with letters sent by the keyboard. Each program was initially written by a human in a human-readable programming language like Java, C++, or Python. But human programs take up a lot of space and contain a lot of unnecessary information to a computer, so they're compiled and made smaller and stored in bits of ones and zeros in memory. The CPU realizes that it needs instructions for how to deal with this mouse click, so it looks up the address for the mouse program and sends a request to the memory subsystem for instructions stored there. Each instruction in the mouse device driver is duly fetched and executed. And that's not nearly the end of the story. Because the CPU learns that the mouse was clicked when the cursor was over a picture of a button on the monitor screen, and so the CPU asks memory for the monitor program to find out what that button is. And then the CPU has to ask memory for the program for the button, which means that the CPU needs the monitor program again to show the video associated with the button, and so it goes. And let's just say that there are a lot of programs involved before you even see the button on the screen light up when you clicked it. So just the simple task of clicking your mouse means visiting all of the critical components of your computer's architecture. Peripherals, the basic input-output system, the CPU, programs, and memory, and not one gremlin.
Students, from this video, I hope that you have learned how the computer gets inputs, works on the given input, and produces the result. After this video, I request you to please read from page number 5 to 7 from your textbook. Underline the definition of computer in your textbook and memorize it. Observe the input, process, and output processes of the working of the computer system. Now, let's see if you can give the definition of a computer. You might have read it in your textbook. You can read it from the textbook again. Yes, a computer is an electronic machine that can accept, store, and then process data to generate information. Computer is an electronic machine. It means that it works on electricity. Humans have five senses to get input from the outside world. These are sight, smell, hear, taste, and touch. Similarly, a computer gets input from the user by keyboard, mouse, scanner, microphone, etc. We give instructions to the computer by using a keyboard or a mouse. When we insert the information in the computer, it goes into the processing unit of the computer, where the central processing unit performs some calculations on the input data and produces results. The CPU transfers these results to the output devices such as the monitor or a printer, etc. And we can read the result on the screen. Consider the following example of IPO: input plus process plus output. Watch this picture carefully and try to answer the questions that I will ask you later. Now, what do you think is going on in this picture? Keeping the picture in the mind, let's try and discuss this question. What is the input in the picture? Student, I hope that you remember the picture and you can answer this question very effectively. Yes, you are right. The input in the picture is oranges. What is the process in the picture? Students, I hope that you remember the picture. The process is the juicer machine, which will do something on the oranges. And what is the output in the picture? Surely you are right again. The output in the picture is orange juice. Input, process, and output. Let's see what is meant by input, process, and output. Dear students, do you remember the names of these devices? Yes, this is the picture of a keyboard and a mouse. We use these devices to do something on the computer. What we do to the computer is called input. Let's see what is an input. Input means take instructions from the users, such as typing alphabets and numbers using a keyboard. Again, students, can you recognize this thing? Yes, it is the CPU box. All the processing of the computer system is done inside this box. It is called process. Let's see what is a process. Process means working on the given input, such as finding sums of two numbers, for example, 2 plus 3. Now students, do you remember the names of these devices? Yes, it is the picture of a monitor and a printer. These devices are called output devices. Now let's see what is an output. Output means displaying the result of the process, such as in the process 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, showing the result 5 on the screen. 5 is the output of the addition of 2 and 3. Now let's see if we can answer the following question. We can write the answers of these questions in loose sheets and show them to the computer teacher when she requires. What is data? You may get help from your textbook to write the answer of this question. Data means raw facts and figures. What is information? Information is processed data. Now, let's recap what we learned in this lesson. IPO means input, processing, output. IPO is a cycle of the working of computer. In IPO, I stands for input, P stands for process, O stands for output. Let's recap. You are required to write the answers of these questions in either notebook or loose sheets. You can show your answers to your computer teacher. You can use your textbook to find the answers of these questions. How does a computer get input? Which part of computer works on the given input? How does a computer show output or result of processing? Define input, define process, define output, define data, define information. Students, I hope that you have enjoyed this lesson. We shall meet again in the second lesson of the same chapter in the next video. Till then, take care of yourselves and Allah Hafiz.